Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course, that makes this episode 18 of Circles and Squares. Happy American Thanksgiving to all of our American listeners. How you doing, Kate?
Obviously we're not doing the Thanksgiving thing over here, but we are still enjoying your wonderful Black Friday.
Right. We're
So
recording on
for
Black
that.
Friday. So thank you for all your Amazon deals we will gladly take advantage of. Well, you guys have your turkeys, so man, it's almost Christmas too. Get that Christmas shopping done for discounted deals, all that stuff.
Yeah. Match that with your Black Friday. It's almost like it's been planned that way.
It's almost like it's been planned that way. Kate, we got a lot planned for this show. Of course, we're going to be starting off by talking about the games we've been playing, getting into the news section after that, and then for our third section, for those that aren't aware, the Game of the Year Awards 2020 are coming up, hosted by the one and only Jeff Keighley. Up on what is it day that it's on? December 4th, right? December 10th.
December 10th, yeah. Thursday, December 10th
Okay,
is
there
when
we go.
the awards are live.
December 4th is
And-
my last day of class for the semester. That makes sense.
It's another big day.
It's another big day.
Oh, that's so early. I'm not done till the 11th. Ugh.
Yes, oh god, soon enough. So just because that is coming up, we're going to be going through for our third section of the show and talking about our predictions of who's going to win each award and our personal picks as well. So look forward to that later on. But for now, Kate, why don't we talk about what we've been playing? And I think you said you had an update for Demon Souls.
Oh, so yeah, I'm going through it at somewhat of a decent pace, maybe not quite as quickly as I would have liked, or that some people have like already, platinum the game and whatnot. But I'm going through and I thought it'd just be fun to give a little update here and there. So we're gonna start with, obviously we're doing our boss count. So the boss update, I've now beat 7 bosses, which is gonna kind of be like
Wow.
my progress tracker because you can do them in like basically a very flexible any order. So I have done 7, and of those 7, we've beaten 4 on the first try. So
That's
I'm
pretty
gonna give
damn
myself
good.
a little clap for that. Good, not bad. So yeah, the other exciting thing about Demon Souls is I was very excited to get my weapon for the game. So the weapons basically stay consistent through all of the Souls games, like just Dark Souls and Demon Souls. They're basically the exact same weapons every game, and you just keep finding the same ones with sometimes like new additions or they've been like slightly modified and updated. So I played through the Dark Souls games with the same, basically the exact same setup. And I was super excited to see if I could like relive it and bring it into Demon Souls as well. And I found it. And the funniest part about finding the weapon was like you pick it up and you have like a storage amount, like inventory space in this game. So once you've exceeded how much weight you can have in your inventory, it has to go to storage. So I was like in the middle of the level and I picked up my weapon off like just some random corpse and I was so excited, but I didn't have room, so it got like booped to my storage.
Oh my god,
And I
that's
was like,
so.
oh, so I had to go back and get it. It was like, drop everything, go. And then I found out that like I was like 8 levels low in strength to actually hold it.
You didn't know the
And
requirements after using it for every Souls game?
well, I don't remember it taking so much of like a because like it's a dex weapon. In this game, you have like either your strength or your dex or your 2 like damage sources, and you typically pick one or the other. And it's a dex weapon, so I didn't expect it to have a lot of strength, and like I either forgot or just it didn't need as much strength in the other games. So I was like, "Fuck, I have to like." So I grinded like 8 levels so that I could even just hold it because I had no strength. And then I looked and like of course in these games you read all the item descriptions because that's where you get a lot of the lore. And the description for it's the Uchi katana, it says like a surprisingly heavy weapon. Like, yeah, it is
I
surprisingly
guess you
heavy.
need that strength.
Like fuck, I guess I do need that strength. And I was like, the game is taunting me. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. I'm absolutely loving the game. It's really interesting to play through after having like being so familiar with the other games because basically everything I run into, like all the environments, like all of the bosses so far pretty much are like, oh my god, like it's really giving me like vibes from like this boss from Dark Souls or like this area from Bloodborne. Like it's so similar. And like in my mind, it's like, oh, look, it's that from Dark Souls. But in reality, it's like, it's actually the inverse. Like everything in Dark Souls would be like actually inspired or like taken from Demon Souls.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, you could
So like,
argue that maybe for the remake they took some inspiration from the newer games and then took it like made it full circle.
I mean, you could, but like some of it's just like, okay, this like the first boss you fight in Demon Souls is like that's a mini boss in Dark Souls, and it's literally the same guy. It's like, but for me, it's like, oh my god, I remember him from Dark Souls. So it's like it's kind of funny, like, just how much they took and, like, reiterated and, like, adapted to each game. It's really interesting to see, like, obviously, we know, like, Demon's Souls is kind of like, like, the first, like, canonical game in the Souls series, but it's just amazing to me how much they actually, like,
Yeah,
took from this game moving forward into all the other games. Like, my favorite area right now is the 3rd Archstone. It's like this, like, abandoned prison kind of area, and it's got, like, some monsters and some stuff, and, like, the atmosphere really reminds me of Bloodborne, which I was not expecting to see in this game because I was expecting, like, more of the fantasy, like, the dark kind of, like, Dark Souls fantasy.
right.
But, like, there's basically a Bloodborne area, and it is, like, it's by far my favorite part of the game. It's just, like, oozing and dripping in the same kind of, like, dark, disturbing, and, like, psychological kind of, like, atmosphere that that Bloodborne has. It is really
It
cool, like,
seems
there's a lot.
I was gonna say it seems to me almost like they didn't realize how successful the Demon Souls was going to be, and then taking these ideas further into the newer games is almost like, hey, we did a really cool thing here in Demon Souls, so why don't we take that idea and do it even better and expand on it for a whole game in Bloodborne?
Yeah, I think so, like, it really seems to me like basically all of the newer mechanics they've put into the games, like, Sekiro maybe not so much, like, Sekiro's kind of its own thing,
That's the
but at
one-off
least for,
though.
like, yeah, but at least for, like, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, it really seems like they took these ideas from Demon Souls and, like, what if we just kind of expanded on this concept? Or, like, what if we changed change it slightly and, like, kind of fitted it more appropriately for this game? So, like, in like, you have, like, your humanity in Dark Souls, and it's kind of similar to, like, how insight works in Bloodborne, and then in Demon Souls, you have, like, the world tendency, and they all have, like, that mechanic is just slightly, like, shifted to fit more appropriately into each game. So it's really interesting, like, how they've managed to, like, take kind of, like, the core concepts, and I think why the games all feel so familiar and so similar, even though the games are quite different as well, is because they're taking these, like, core concepts and just modifying them for each game.
Like tweaking them for what they
So
want that game to be specifically, in comparison to what they've already made.
yeah, exactly. So that kind of brings me into the other point I wanted to talk about just because I've now experienced it is the world tendency. So this is something unique to Demon Souls, and I think, like, it's a lot more it changes the game a lot more than something like Humanity or Insight does in the other games. It's different, and I think, like, I like it in theory, but I don't know if it's, like, perfect in execution.
Oh, do tell.
So I will say there's 2 different types. I love the, like, tendency for your character. So, it basically, like, it's kind of like type of, like, morality meter. So, if you do, like, bad things, like, you kill your NPCs and, like, you invade others and whatnot, and do, like, like, morally ambiguous things, you get, like, a black tendency, and that will make stuff harder for you in the game, and if you do good things, you get a white tendency, and that will help you out in some ways. So I like that it's sort of, like, got a morality system baked into it, and, like, these are things that even in the newer games, like, you can kill your NPCs, and that's just whatever, the consequences you miss out on, like, their storyline and their dialogue, or maybe they'd become a vendor lately or something. But, like, people kill NPCs all the time, that's just something you do, and, like, the game never stops you. It's not like, "Oh, but that's an important NPC, you can't kill them." It's just, "Well, do whatever you want," but now maybe there's kind of, like, a bigger consequence in this game if you're just an asshole.
Yeah, is it like significantly harder though?
So my character tendency is neutral. I haven't really, like, done anything. But it does make it significantly harder and, like, you lose max health and stuff like that. But what I have experienced is now the world tendencies. So those also kind of have the same black and white meter, and they get white when you kill bosses and also if you defeat invaders. And then they get dark if you die. But it's not just any death, you have to be, like, in your human form. So when you die in human form, you go to soul form. So once you're in soul form, you're fine to die as much as you want, but it's that one death once you're in human form, and if you die in there, it goes black. So I think I must have accidentally done it twice in one world, and it's now a black world,
Mm.
and, oh my god, it makes it, like, quite a significant jump in difficulty in the level.
I find that
On one
interesting
hand,
because
it's kinda
I've not heard of this at all before, and people always, or even the debate goes on about like difficulty in these games too. So it's interesting that
Mhm.
this has kind of a pseudo built-in difficulty slider in a way, depending how you were to play, or at least that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting from you.
It's really interesting, like, if you make the world white, the enemies actually get easier. They do less damage to you. So, like, in a way, you can make it easier. The problem is it's hard to get a white world, but it's quite easy to get a black world because you just have to die. And,
Okay.
like, in the world I'm in, like, I haven't beaten any bosses in that one archstone because the run to the boss is very difficult because now I've got these black enemies. So what it does is it puts in beside the regular enemies. Every now and again, you'll get this, like, red phantom one, and the red phantom one is just way tougher. Like, I've leveled, so it's not quite as extreme now, but when I first was in that area, the regular enemy would take 4 hits for me to kill, and then the red version would take 13. So
Oh
that's,
wow,
like, a
that's
pretty big
significant.
jump, and it would do a lot more damage. So, like, whatever. I got past that, and then I got to this part of the area that, like, and they're not every single enemy. It seems to just be, like, a couple specific ones here and there. So they're not prevalent so much to the point where, like, that's all you're fighting, but they're in there enough that, like, it is significant. So I kinda got a little bit further in the area after getting past the first one, and then there's another red phantom, and it's kind of beside this, like, pseudo mini boss. Definitely an enemy that's meant to be a little bit more challenging, and you'll likely die to a couple times before you figure him out. So he's there, and then the red one is right beside him. So either you're fighting them at the same time or, like, you have to be, like, tactful and, like, pull one at a time. But the red one, it one-shots me. It literally does more damage per hit than, like, any of the bosses I fought.
Jesus.
So it's pretty insane. So, like, I can kill it relatively easily because, like, I've gotten a bit stronger now. But it strikes me as, like, an interesting thing. Like, I kind of really like the world tendency in theory in the sense that, like, you're kind of affecting the world around you more than other games, and, like, you have to kind of be tactful on what you're doing and, like, which area you're going to at any given time so that one doesn't, like, spiral out of control. And
Right.
I like it in theory, but then in practice, I feel like it's just gonna be really tough for a lot of people because the game's already difficult, and the reason that you got a black tendency was because you were dying already. So,
Right. It's
like,
kind of weird how it works that way.
yeah, it's, like, kind of like punishing you for failure and then rewarding you for success. I don't know, I kinda have a love-hate relationship with it, and I think it's, like, sort of dated in the way, like, it definitely didn't come through in any other game. But yeah, anyway, despite that, I'm absolutely loving the game still, and hopefully by next episode, we'll have a few more bosses down and perfected, obviously.
I have high
But
faith in
speaking of
that.
but speaking of bizarre, the other game I wanted to talk about today is Pyre. So, Supergiant is obviously a massive studio right now. They're
They're
really big
taking over the
in all the
world with
news with,
Hades right now. I think
yeah, taking over the world and the underworld
maybe the Game
and
Awards
everything.
too.
And
We'll
maybe the
see what
Game
we think
Awards.
later on in the third section.
So anyway, I kind of I got back into Pyre because of Hades. Basically, like, this game looks amazing. I really want to play it, but I didn't finish their previous entry, so I've kind of hopped back into it.
Have you've
And
played all their
Pyre,
games, right? Or
I have. I will admit, sadly, I didn't beat Transistor, which is, like,
oh, that
arguably, like,
pains
one of the
me.
better ones. I know. I beat Bastion. I played about probably half of Transistor, and I'm assuming I'm about halfway through Pyre now.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
I've beaten Bastion and Transistor. Love Transistor to
mhm.
death. Um, Pyre I played also about halfway, and I kind of fell off. So I'm interested to see what you think. And then Hades too, like, is definitely something I want to check out soon.
Hades looks amazing, yeah. Hades looks like they've taken a lot of stuff from every game they've done and just sort of amalgamated into, like, this beautiful artistic game, but we'll get more into that for the Game Awards. Right now we're gonna talk about Pyre. It is bizarre. This game is whack. Like, it is just so weird. Um, I like it, but I think it's definitely, like, a niche game. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone even though I'm enjoying it. I think you get a lot out of this game if you get invested in the characters and the story, and if you don't, there isn't really much else that will draw you to play it. Because, like, the actual gameplay of the sports game is just every time I play it, I just think this is so weird. Like, it's been, like, 20 hours in or whatever, and I'm still, like, I'm still playing the sports game. It's bizarre. It's fine. Like, I don't it doesn't, like, draw me, but it also doesn't put me off. I'm very neutral towards it, I guess. Like, I'm
Yeah,
playing on the regular difficulty, so, like, it's not incredibly difficult, but it's also, like, just not brain like, I could see, like, there being some, like, strategy to it, and maybe if you're just into sports games in general, like, there probably is a lot of, like, ways you can build your characters that make it kind of, like, intense, and, like, I think there's even an online so you can, like, play against other people, which
yeah, yeah.
could
It's
be
interesting.
fun.
because I found like the game is very much just it's like story driven, right? So you're trying to get each
Mhm.
of your characters to progress their story, you know, build their relationship, figure out who they are, and then once they complete their arc, they kind of get what do they get transported to a different world, or they're saved
Yeah,
or something?
so what you're trying to do is you're all kind of like well, you're in the underworld and you're basically like playing through this sports
It's
tournament
like a sports
to
league almost.
it's basically a sports league, but it's very, like, mystical, like, it's kind of, like, run by the gods, basically, and there's a lot of, like, faith elements tied to it, and basically, like, if you win this tournament, one of your members can ascend and go back up to the regular world. So you're trying to get your team and your crew, like, out of the underworld and back up to, like, relive their lives, and then there's
Hmm.
obviously, like, a lot of other story going on about, like, you know, what they're gonna do when you get up there and, like, the factions that rule,
Yeah.
and there's a lot going on in terms of, like, world design, but that's kind of like the intimate story is very much your characters. And as you play more games with them and you have options to like talk to them between matches and stuff, you can learn more about them. And you learn like why they were down to the underworld in the first place, like what kind of person they are. Like,
Yeah, it's a lot like Spiritfarer actually, what that I played earlier in the year.
yeah,
Like you're trying
it
to
is quite
complete
similar.
people's requests and get them to like an ultimate goal where you actually after you have like the best relationship you can is when you lose them. And I think that's a really cool mechanic. The problem is with Pyre, at least like my point is just I think the same as yours, that I don't find the actual gameplay of the sport. I don't even what's the sport even called, but I don't find that gameplay particularly fun.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, like, if it was just that, I would definitely not play it, and I think that's why it takes a level of investment for your characters because once you start to care about them and, like, become invested, you want to see them succeed, and it's yeah, it's got that really interesting mechanic where, like, when you're finally ready to, like, have someone ascend, it's like you want to give it to your favorite character because you want
You want
them
their story arc
to
to
be
be completed,
successful,
right?
but then at the same time, it's like, I don't wanna lose my favorite character, like, they're just gone now, I can't interact with them anymore, so, like, the game almost, like, makes you feel selfish as a person, and
Well,
so
yeah.
it's
Especially
and, like
too since you if you give away a character you like to play also like not even just their story wise but also a character that's really helpful for you when it comes to actually playing, then if you lose
yeah.
that character that's a detriment too.
Yeah, exactly, like, that character is probably, like, one of your strongest team members that you've also, like, invested, like, resources into, so it's kind of like playing on a few different levels of, like, you as a person are kind of like you're kind of, like, involved almost, like, as a player in the game, even, like, though you're just making decisions from outside. So, like, I've definitely, like, sat there on the, like, okay, select, like, who is it gonna be, and I've sat there and kind of, like, stressed over it. But then I also, like, are making decisions based on, like, what's good for the team, like, one character was kind of, like, not getting along with other characters, and it's like, well, maybe I let them ascend because it's better for, like, the group in general, there won't be as much conflict. But then it's
Yeah.
like, but I'm rewarding that person for kind of being an asshole, so it's like, "Oh, what do I do?" And I think that's really neat, and the other thing, the game rewards you really well for, like, trying to read the situation, so when you fight another team, like, you kinda get to know some of the characters that are, like, I guess, quote, technically, like, enemies in a sense, they're the other sports teams you're facing, but you get to know some of the characters on different teams, and you can kind of, like, guess, like, if you put in because you don't always fight with your main squad. Out of your squad, you always choose 3 to go into each game. And then when you get to the next game, you choose a different 3 and, like, ideally, you're kind of, like, rotating your team a little bit. But in certain ones, you kind of, like, pick based on who you're fighting because it's like, "Oh, these characters kind of have a rivalry," or, like, "These characters, like, know each other from before," and, like, you actually get different, like, dialogue, like, they'll pause mid-game and talk to each other based on what you've picked. So it's really rewarding to kind of, like, try to figure out, like, not only who your characters are, but how they react to other characters in the world, either in your party or outside of your party. And like the last time I played, I put someone in because I thought like I'd seen like evidence of like a little bit of a connection with one of the characters, and they actually like talked mid battle and I got an item for it.
That's
And it
really
was
cool.
so rewarding because it was like, oh, I picked that character like knowing that like or like assuming that they would have some kind of interaction and then they did. So there's just, like, so much, like, going into, like, trying to figure out who these characters are, and I think if that draws you, this game is great, and if that doesn't draw you, then you're just kind of awkwardly playing a sports game and, like, reading Wikipedia articles about people you don't care about, so, it's weird. I love Supergiant as a studio, and I've actually just been watching, like, a documentary of them, like, making Hades as well. Just looking at that documentary and then also just my own assumption based on their games, like, they just seem like a studio that's fantastic and they just have a creative vision and they go for it regardless of, like, if it's something that consumers know that they want or, like, if it's popular right now. Like, obviously Hades, yeah, like, a roguelikes are huge right now, but, like, something like Pyre is so bizarre. Like, nobody was asking for Pyre. Nobody even knew a game like Pyre could exist, and they, like, clearly just had a passion project and made it. And I
Yeah.
think that shows through so much in the game. Like, it's got so much, like, love and care and, like, attention to detail put into it.
Yeah, and
So
it's also like it was a big left turn for them too, because Bastion and Transistor were relatively similar. Like they were different in the way they controlled and like what kind of game they were, but they were both more action focused. You know, not as many interactions between different party members. You only had like one character and maybe a few side characters to have dialogue with. But this is very much like it's just a different form of game for them, and I think it's kind of like Hades in that way with like more character interaction. But maybe it's the stepping stone they needed to get to something like Hades. Um,
yeah. So I would say, like, if you're really into story and, like, character and, like, that type of, like, a game that, like, wants you to read a lot of lore and stuff,
mhm.
Pyre's fantastic, and, like, you'll get through the sports game. It's just very neutral. It's just kind of, like, a little bit of time in the game, I guess, to, like, break up reading and, like, so you're doing something.
Cool, cool. Okay, well, I guess we'll move into the stuff that I've been playing for the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to give a quick update first. I've been playing, well, of course, I've been playing Persona 5 The Royal. I've been playing lots of Apex with the new season still, but I'm not going to get into those. I do want to give a quick update on Miles Morales because I actually beat it, like, I think like 2 days after we last recorded our other episode. So I've been sitting on this one for a while, and I just want to reiterate, like, how much I enjoyed this experience. And I want to relate it to a few episodes when I played Uncharted Lost Legacy. Like I really liked the way they kind of condensed the storyline and it was quicker pace, and I found like this really reflected the same thing in Miles Morales, and just how it takes all the good parts from the original Spider-Man but kind of trims the fat and keeps all the good stuff, and it's just a really tight package. Like I love how they went with almost a different cast than the original Spider-Man, aside from a couple, you know, recurring characters, J. Jonah Jameson and stuff like I mentioned last time. But the cast is very much centered around Miles, like his friends and family. And I like that they changed it up from the original because I think it just offers it a way different perspective. And the characters that they chose to include really do a good job of conveying like Miles' youth and inexperience compared to, like, you know, Spider-Man's more established by the time where his story is within his game, whereas Miles is really just starting. So there's a lot of funny phone conversations like he has with his friend Genki that I mentioned last time about you'll have some conversations that are about like Spider-Man and what he's doing as Miles Morales in the suit, but then also you have a lot of conversations about like, hey, how's your reading going for homework, and like, you know, Genki's busy programming a video game on his computer in the bedroom, and they're kind of talking about like video games and just very much like normal teenager stuff as well.
Right. So they've done a good job to make them very, like, believable and, like, real characters within the game as well, and not just, like, I mean, that's
Yeah,
always the thing.
yeah.
That's part about Spider-Man, right? Is he's, like, the relatable, like, average guy kinda superhero.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not like Spider-Man obviously relatable too, but Miles I think is even more relatable on like an inexperienced level, at least like where they're portraying him in his journey. So I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword though, because as much as I really appreciate the cast and like what they showed here and the like tightness of the experience, I liked it so much. I do wish that it was more fledged out. So I'm really hoping just in the sequel, maybe they combine, like, I'm assuming you're going to play as both Miles and Peter. So maybe you'll get, you know, a little bit of both of their worlds.
They overlap, right? So then you think going forward, it's gonna kind of, like, be the next step for both of these characters in whatever sequel game comes out?
Yeah, I mean, this game post credits it does relate in the post credit scenes. So I mean, they're obviously connected. It's not a spoiler to say that Spider-Man, like Peter Parker, does somehow make some appearances in this game. I'm not going to say how, but I mean he's referenced and like they're intertwined. Like this is
Right.
for sure.
We figured.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The game too, like one last point on it, I really appreciate how they've changed and up the side quest structure of this game compared to the original. I found a lot of like the street crimes and the, you know, just the stuff they do to make the world feel more alive was kind of repetitive and way more inconsequential in the original, whereas in this one they do a good job of making the side quests feel a lot more tailor-made. Like there's fewer of them, but they have more thought, I feel, put into them. And it's not just the same like taking down enemies and chasing cars around the city because, you know, bad guys robbed a bank or something. In this one they kind of change it, like you are following a car, but you have to take pictures of its license plate first to see, and then Genki will track like which one has the stolen goods, and and then you're chasing this car down, and it's a bunch of thieves, and they've stolen Christmas presents because the game takes place in December, and it's just it's just a little bit more heartfelt.
You took your Amazon order from your front door before you got home.
Yeah, that's right. That's the whole problem. They took your PS5. That's why you don't have one yet.
Oh, how dare they?
I know, but it's just like they're not as cookie cutter this time, and I really appreciate that. And also with the crimes, like they used to be a little bit distracting coming up in the first one, and where in this one it's more so like, yeah, they're going on, but it's more so if it's up to you if you want to go pursue them, and if not, the game really doesn't like ram them down your throat in the same way. And I just like that setup a lot more, because by the time you get like partway through the story, you almost just want to leave that stuff to the side, or at least I did.
Do you think it helps too, like, I guess with the length of the game, and like there's just less interruption, and like you don't have to come across them so many times? Like, I always finding in those kind of games, and like it makes me think of playing Red Dead, and you get all the random events, like you ride by someone, and they're like, oh, help, mister, and they're like, they're like horses died on the side of the road and you got to rescue them, and like it's always really exciting for the first like 10, maybe 20 hours of the game. You stop and do every one, and then after that you're like, I can't be bothered, it's the same shit, I know what you're doing, like I've got a mission to do. A shorter game maybe helps those kind of things out a little bit.
I mean, that's a good point, actually, because I feel like maybe part of the reason the crimes don't get as repetitive in this one is because I spent less time in this game in general. Like, I think I beat the whole thing. I didn't get all the collectibles and whatever, but I mean, I went through, I did like all the major side quests. I did, quite a few collectibles, beat the story, and I think it was like maybe 10 hours total. So, right. I mean, it's way shorter, so maybe just my exposure to the crimes was shorter, because the other one was, I mean, the first game was way longer, right? So maybe I just was more exposed. I don't know, but just the whole package in this, I feel is like very strong, and it's definitely a contender for like my personal game of the year. So yeah, that's SpiderMan. Go play it. You should definitely check out the combo pack at some time too, like with the SpiderMan remaster, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great deal, especially because I think they upped some stuff for the 2018 game as well, right? It isn't just straightforward.
Yeah, it's a total remaster there as well with the package, I believe. And it also, like, even if you just were to play the PS4 version, just the loading and because I mean, it's a big city, right? And there's the fast travel, and it's like instantaneous in Miles Morales, like I mentioned last time. So I mean, just having that ease of movement around with the original would be great. Yeah,
well, it's definitely on the list one day, right? The what we always say, like, one day.
I know, it's a one-day game too. It's like that, that the new World Ends With You game was just announced, and that the original World Ends With You is like an old DS game, and it's been on like I should play that. It looks interesting game for like the last decade.
Yeah, that game's really neat. Actually, a friend of mine was showing me recently about it. Like just kind of like one of those like, oh, look at this, like just check it out for a quick 10 minutes, and then like a couple weeks later it's like, oh, there's a trailer for a new one after so many years. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Cool. The list never ends, man. But speaking of the list, I actually went back and I've played my first PS4 game now on the PS5 as well. Actually, never mind. I guess Apex is PS4, but my first kind of single player experience, I've actually went back and I've been checking out Soulcalibur VI, which, yes, that's really weird for me because I don't usually play a lot of fighting games, but this is like my one exception to the rule, I guess you could say, unless you want to mention Smash, obviously. But yeah, Soulcalibur VI. So I've been playing that. It's a lot of nostalgic for me, just with the cast like Mitsurugi and Nightmare and Sung Mina and like all these characters we know, like we've known for so long since playing like Soulcalibur 2 and 3. So it's cool to be back in that world. And let me tell you, Kate, there's so much content in this game. It's ridiculous. Usually like, fighting games. Sorry?
That's number 6. So you got 6 games worth of content.
That's right. It's like 6 times bigger than the first one.
Right.
So like usually in a fighting game you get the arcade mode, and then you get maybe like a story mode, and then there's the online stuff and the verses and all that, maybe some challenges. But in this game the arcade mode actually is one of the things I used to love about Soulcalibur, because you'd go through like the arcade for each specific character. They'd have a lineup of fighters they had to face based on their story or like some reason they had to fight this person, and then at the end you'd unlock some art and whatever. So in this game the arcade is actually like the worst mode. It's basically just like battles, and then you don't really get a whole lot, some character art stuff and whatever. But in this game there's like 2 amazing single player modes, which is so much content, I feel, for a fighting game. The first of which is a story mode, which goes through like the whole chronicle of of the Soulcalibur story with like Soul Edge and how the whole sword gets formed and all the characters are fighting to own this powerful sword. So the timeline's at the top, and you kind of go through and you play the major events in this timeline. But what's really cool about the mode is you're not only just playing through the major events of the overall story of Soulcalibur, but in between you can also play like a little side story for every single character, and it's like anywhere from 5 to 6 or 7 different missions and battles that you go through as this character, and you play like their own little story within the timeline. So that's really cool to add extra flavor and context, and the characters interact. And it's just like a series of challenge battles, basically, with each specific character.
Okay, that's kind of cool. I'm picturing that sort of like, yeah, instead of it being their own story mode, it's just like a couple missions that you can sort of pick and choose to do.
Yeah, that goes in and out of the major story overall. So I think the game, like, it starts in like the 1500s or something. So the first one I did was one of the main characters, Mitsurugi. He's a samurai, so he had kind of one of the first characters to encounter the sword early on in its time after creation. So kind of going through and seeing like he's a formidable fighter and he's trying to challenge all the other opponents. Like, the story's not great. It's literally just excuses for people to get into fights, right? Like that's kind of what it is. So not that the story's great.
But like, that's the fighting game thing, right? It's either like there's absolutely no exposition. It's like, okay, we're 2 dudes, we just happen to be in a park, let's fight. Or
Yeah,
it's like
basically
the most intense anime shit ever. And like there's no in between at all.
Yeah, and like none of these people have any kind of conflict resolution skills. They just like immediately resort to, I'm gonna try and fight you. So that's all this is too. And it's so ham-fisted and like cheesy voice acting.
It's like a flow chart. It's like, do you have a problem with this guy? Yes, fight him. Like, do you have a problem with him? No, fight him anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
it.
that's one of the things I appreciate so much about Soulcalibur in general is like it's trying to tell somewhat of a serious story, but the context is obviously so cheesy, and it meshes so well with like, I find the combat kind of funny too in a weird way. Like, I don't know how many people have like played Soulcalibur, are familiar, but it's like a 3D fighter. Like, it's not just left and right. You can also move up and down and kind of go in circles, and it's like a 3D space you're fighting in. So you can knock people off the edge of the ring, and just some of the collision and like the way you can hit the characters while they're already defeated. So they'll keep, when you hit them, they'll be like, oh, when they get defeated. But if you keep hitting them, they'll go like, oh, and it's just, there's some really funny moments you can create.
Right, like the game doesn't take itself too seriously. It's definitely like a bit of a joke.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. And so the other mode, getting back to the story modes, there's like the story mode, like I said, but there's also another one called Libra of Soul, which is super intense sounding. And what that is it's where you make your own created character. And then you go through like a separate side mission that takes place in the same world as the story being told for the other characters, but it's not as related. It's kind of just a random guy, whoever you create. And the character creator, first of all, is like quite extensive in this game. Like, you can really go ahead and make some pretty accurate characters if you want to take the time and like make Captain Falcon or whoever you're interested in.
So that's true. Like, for what I've seen on this game, like 90% of it, like by far, what's got like the most attention in this game in terms of media is like the character creator's so good. People are making all sorts of characters. Like, yeah, it's like you got like Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima. They've made him, and it's like on Reddit. And then like someone else has got like their Iron Man, and the next person's Shrek, because it's always fucking Shrek.
It's always Shrek.
He has to show up in every game. Like,
yeah, it's always Shrek.
It's really good though.
So yeah, I wish I was more creative. Like, I just didn't put the time into making my character, right? I could kind of toss one together, made him look whatever. But it's neat because you can actually, I don't think you can change your character's appearance during the mode, but you can equip them with all the different weapons. So if like I started, I gave my character Nightmare's sword to start because he was my, my most familiar character in the series just to get through. But as I've moved along, I've realized like, oh, you know what, maybe Nightmare isn't really my character in this one. So, and I want to try someone else. So I can just change my weapon on the fly with my custom character, go through, the different line. I think I met up with one of the main characters so far, Killick, and he's kind of taking me through, and it's kind of serves as a tutorial and its own separate story at the same time. So, and there's also some like morality choices you make in there where you can choose to do like good or bad actions, and then depending on the end of the game, you'll either get like the good version of the sword or the bad one. So it's kind of cool. It's just another excuse to give you more battles, obviously, but I just really appreciate the amount of content.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot going on, and like a lot of people are happy just to buy fighting games for like the multiplayer and the online, but it's always really cool when they add in a bunch of single player stuff. And even if you are playing it socially, that single player stuff's kind of fun to like controller pass back and forth. Or it's great like if you just want to like, you want to sit at home and you don't want to deal with like, laggy 8-year-olds online that are better than you. And, like, you can just play your game in one of those modes.
Hey, trust me, everyone's better than me. I've got to play some matches online just to check it out, but I'm sure I'm gonna get like rocked by these people online. It's a good game though. Like, the last thing I want to mention is just my experience with the DualSense playing this game, because it's my first really extensive use of the D-pad for any kind of like non-menu based stuff, because everything else I've been playing is like, not as action focused on the D-pad, and I'm happy to say like it's snappy. Like, it feels really good to play. Obviously this is pretty D-pad intensive, having to put in the inputs for different special moves and stuff, so I've really enjoyed that. And I've also really enjoyed just how it runs on the PS5 itself in terms of like load times, because I know that one of the knocks on this game when it was released was it's really text heavy, especially in a lot of both of the single player modes actually. So just having those load times kind of decreased between text sections and like loading into the fights has really made it a snappier experience. So I'm really glad I'm playing it on the new console for sure.
Good. And I've got to ask too, just thinking, back to the controller, do you notice like a lot of like the features are good? Like, is the rumble a really big part of it too? Like,
No. I don't think it's been optimized for like the PS5 in terms of them going back and like adding any kind of haptics or anything like that. It's more so just like it's just mimicking what the PS4 did in that way, which is too bad. But I mean, I wouldn't expect that for very many PS4 games, aside from maybe like I expect it from the first party studio stuff.
Yeah,
at least on
I'm
the
just
newer
thinking
games.
like some games, like I guess maybe not this game, but a lot of games in general just they have rumble already kind of like built in, and like some games even use like the microphone and stuff. So I'm wondering like if it would feel like a step up still, even if they don't actually go in and like make alterations, but just having like the better controller itself. I wonder how much of a difference that would make, but I guess this maybe isn't the best game to test it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's an older game too, right? It's a few years. Came out. I don't remember what year it came out. I think it was maybe like 2018 or something. But I mean, I don't see them going back. I hope they do, because it's cool, and I think they could do some really cool stuff with the rumble in terms of like, hey, the Astaroth just hit you with his giant axe. That's gonna make the controller like really feel the hit in comparison to like a character with a dagger or something, right? But yeah, too bad. That would be cool though. Maybe Soulcalibur VII. You never know. Be cool. But yeah, anyway, that's what I've been playing pretty much. Like I said, I'm doing a bunch of different stuff, but in honesty, Kate, what I'm doing is I'm killing time until I get Cyberpunk in a couple weeks, hopefully.
If you get Cyberpunk, yeah, cross your fingers.
Yeah, I'm just my goal right now is just like, hey, I gotta buckle down and beat Persona 5 Royal before Cyberpunk comes out, because they're both like those long kind of play them in the background kind of games. Well, at least that's how I like to do it, like longer game with shorter stuff, mixed in. So I can't do Persona and Cyberpunk at the same time. That's just crazy.
Exactly. I always say you gotta have one game that's like your intense, I'm really into it and I'm like so immersed and I love it. And then you gotta have like your relaxing games for when it's like about an hour before bed and like I don't feel like I can really like make a ton of progress in the other game. So I'm just gonna relax, get sleepy, and play like Pyre or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, so I guess that'll do us for what we've been playing this week. So join us after the break, where we'll be breaking down some news articles for you guys. So don't go anywhere. Alright guys, welcome back for the second part of the show, where we're going to break down some news for the last couple of weeks. And Kate, let's be honest here, the biggest news story of everything that's happened so far in terms of like PlayStation stuff is just like the damn unavailability of the console itself. But I mean, I wouldn't say that's really a news story. That's just like an unfortunate circumstance. And what do you really say besides like good luck finding one and like fuck the scalpers, right?
Yeah, I'm so sorry for you. Like, fingers crossed. Refresh your pages every 2 seconds.
Yeah, just do your best. Try not to buy a $1,300 PlayStation from jerks online. But I mean, yeah, just good luck to everyone, and hope you find one soon enough. Maybe for Christmas, right?
Yeah, hopefully, maybe there'll be another wave for Christmas, and eventually.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some news here, Kate. We got 3 news articles for the day, and the first one's like just a really cool, lighthearted story to do with the London Underground, actually, which is very interesting. We've got lots of English family, and we've been to London, and it's cool. They actually rebranded the London Underground as part of a marketing thing for the PS5 launch. So for those that have seen it, the London Underground has like that red circular kind of logo, like for the train, right? And
yeah,
so
it's like the red circle with like the text going through the middle.
Yeah.
the underground. And then what they've done is, because the red circle is already so perfect, they've changed some of the other stations to have like the green triangle or like the pink square, and so they've just totally decorated it up for PlayStation.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, I guess, I mean, it's the same as when they changed like a screen in Times Square in New York or something, right? But just something about it being London was really cool to me. And also, we can't forget to remember the Greg's pasties as well. As you saw online, do you want to explain that?
Right. Okay. So possibly the greatest crossover of all time. For those of you who don't know, Greg's is like kind of like a sort of like a fast foody sort of chain.
Yeah.
Super super popular all over the UK, and they do pasties, which I guess are kind of like if a pie and a sandwich had like the ultimate love child.
Yeah, describe it as like think of like a really high quality, or maybe not really high quality, but like a way higher quality Hot Pocket or something. But instead of having like, you know, pepperoni and cheese, it'll have like, ooh, Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas lunch, like Christmas dinner flavor, and like
exactly. It'd be like beans and cheese, like
yeah,
and like kind of like
steak
sort of
and
like
mushroom.
meat pie kind of fillings, but it's like delivered in like kind of like a sandwich sort of style. You could like walk around and outside and eat it. So Greg's is wonderful. Like, like maybe it's not something you should be eating every day because you might die, but it's like just a wonderful comfort food, and it's so delightful. And so they sponsored, or they partnered with Sony as well. And there was someone, I think we saw a tweet on it, is where we saw
Yeah,
this
yeah,
first, but
yeah.
someone had like gotten a delivery to their house of like a package of Greg's pasties, but the box was all done up with like like this PlayStation symbols and like the font and whatnot. So they actually partnered as well.
It was great, and I think even the pasties were shaped like the PlayStation symbols also. So, just cool stuff. That's your English food moment. If you were coming here for that kind of information, so thanks for sticking with it.
Next week on the show, we're gonna go over fish and chips with curry sauce.
That's right. So wait around for that. We're gonna move to our next story though, Kate. This one is not a shocker at all, but the PlayStation 5 had apparently PlayStation's biggest launch ever. Despite the the COVID concerns about maybe not being able to produce as many consoles as they'd want and whatever. But yep, this is the biggest console launch ever for PlayStation. Maybe not super surprising, considering these things just seem to get more popular every generation. But I don't think we have any official sales numbers yet, but I know that Sony's still trying to outsell the PS4 for first fiscal year, which apparently was about 7 million units. So looks like they're gonna make that, and just, I mean, impressive sales numbers, right?
Too, based on like the stock issues.
Yeah.
Like they've had like, I mean, I don't think there just aren't any available, right? But like every single one they've been able to put out has been sold, and like, so I guess it's impressive, but I guess it's also just a shame because obviously like people aren't getting the PlayStations they want. There's still tons of people waiting.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, it's impressive too in the sense that they're not selling them physically in stores either. Like, it's completely online. So at least for most of the world, I would imagine. So it's kind of neat.
I think some physical retailers in the States, but I think the majority of places, especially with how the world is right now, are all online sales.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously not super surprising news. The PS5 is definitely going to be, a major seller for the next few years, at least until like all the early adopters have their consoles. So I'm sure it'll be, rivaling the PS4 by the time all is said and done. Yeah. Let's get into our last news story for the day, Kate. And of course, this is the PS Plus games for December 2020. For those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time, we take a PS Plus game each every single month, and we play through for the next episode and give our little review on that. So for December 2020, we have 3 selections. We have Worms Rumble, Just Cause 4, and Rocket Arena. So also for those of you that maybe are new, we did a giveaway for Rocket Arena, 4 or 5 episodes ago now, right, Kate?
I think so. Maybe we'll post maybe
we'll put the link in the description.
We'll put the link in the description, yeah.
Yeah, so we did talk about Rocket Arena on a previous episode and kind of went through that. So I think we'll cross this one off the list for December, and we'll go with Worms Rumble and Just Cause 4. And so which one are you feeling?
Well, just cause you were so kind to ask me first.
Just Cause.
I'd like to take Worms.
Okay.
I think it just Worms is a game I have not played in very like a lot of years. Like it has been like early 2000s, I think, is the last time I played Worms, when we would like sit side by side at the computer and like go through like various like flash games and stuff.
I don't even know what version of Worms that was, but we used to play it, off and on, probably literally the year 2000 or like, 1999 or like whenever that was.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm kind of excited in a way to revisit the series and see how it's you know how it's hold up over the years, if it's still funny or if it's just horrible fart jokes and I hate
Yeah,
it.
I have a feeling you're in for a few of those fart jokes, but this one does look cool.
I
Like
think
it's
so.
the real time action. It's not turn based like the old ones. So at least
Yeah,
maybe they've
I'm
breathed some new life into it somehow.
yeah, exactly. I was kind of disappointed. I was hoping for the like classic turn-based, like how I picture worms in my mind. But I am at the same time excited to, or maybe excited is kind of a little exaggerated, but I'm interested to see kind of where it's gone and yeah, how the series goes. And yeah, I'm crossing my fingers that you do not want to play worms because I want to.
You know what? I gotta be honest. I probably would have picked Rocket Arena out of all three of these.
Mhm.
I actually quite like Rocket Arena. Like I know it's got some maybe like you know naysayers here and there, but I think it's a good game, and going free to play on PS Plus is going to be great. So I'll
Yeah.
be happy to take Just Cause though. I mean, none of these games really scream to me, but I'm interested to see it in the
Mhm.
sense that people really like Just Cause. Like the people that are into it, I feel are pretty passionate fan base, and also just like jumping into a bigger PS4 game in terms of like being one of those big action kind of sandboxes. I feel like maybe that'll
Mhm.
be cool to check out on the PS5 with the SSD. Yeah, so I'm happy to do Just Cause, sure.
Awesome. Perfect. So that works out very well. I think there's only been one time where we've actually had to tie break it. So
Yeah, and
we're
remember,
gonna
I own the tiebreaker for the next time we have the same
yes,
one,
yes,
for
you
winning that
do.
last competition. So yeah,
Oh, and I know I'm gonna get stuck with something really bad. Like you're gonna save that. And I'm gonna be playing like God knows what.
exactly. Well, I hope so, but we'll wait and see. But anyway, we'll get back on next episode and give our impressions of those games, and that's going to close us out for the news section today too. So we will take one more short break, and we'll be right back to talk about the Game Awards for 2020. So don't go anywhere, and we'll see you in a second. Alright guys, welcome back to the last part of the show where we will be talking about the Game Awards for 2020 because, as we said at the top of the show, those are happening on December 10th. And so we thought it'd be fun to go through and go over our picks.
And make some predictions as well as to what we think is going to take the award for all the categories.
Yeah, so...
Um,
mhm.
I think we've decided we're not doing every single category. We're kind of going to be skipping out on some of the like esports and content creator ones just because we don't
It's
follow
not our
it
thing. It's not our
too
jam.
much. Yeah, but we're gonna go over all of the actual game specific awards and see how well we do with some of our predictions.
Sure. So yeah, I guess we'll go through category by category. We'll give the pick we think is going to win, and then also our own personal vote. Yeah, and we'll just go through it like that. So without any further ado, Kate, maybe we'll save Game of the Year for last,
Okay,
just to
sure.
change
I
it
think
up.
that's fitting.
So let's start off with Best Game Direction, which is awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design.
Yeah, so this was a tough one for me because the only game I've actually played on this list is Ghost of Tsushima. So it's the only one I can confidently say like for sure I think like I would be happy with that winning. I think it deserves it. But I think I'm gonna give this to Hades just from all of the content I've seen on Hades online and just the reception of everyone who's been playing this game. I think it just looks absolutely phenomenal, and as we spoke about earlier in the show, Supergiant is known for their like dedication to their passionate creative vision. So I'm gonna give this one for Hades.
Cool. So sorry, Hades was your pick, and you
So
think?
Hades is the one I think is gonna get it.
Oh, okay,
um
okay.
yeah.
And okay, so yeah, I'm similar to you. I have Hades winning it as well. But for game direction, my personal pick's The Last of Us 2. Just for, I mean, I just feel like this is, when you're talking about game direction as far as like creative vision and story and everything, I feel like The Last of Us is going to win there. So moving along, we have Best Narrative for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game.
So why don't you go first? We'll kind of go back and
Oh,
forth on this.
sure,
You
sure.
take this
So
one first.
yeah, so for narrative, I think it's going to win, and I also will pick The Last of Us Part 2. I feel like this category is basically slam dunk.
Yeah, I agree. I pick Last of Us as well for this one. I think it's just a little bit more narrative focused compared to some of the other games in this category. So
Yeah, and we should say too, we're not going over all the nominees. There would just be way too many to cover. So obviously, go to the Game Awards website, where you can see all the nominees for each section as well. So let's do next up is Best Art Direction for outstanding creative and/or technical achievement in artistic design and animation.
For me, it's like I haven't played some of these games, so like if I'd played Hades, I probably would have voted for Hades because it looks gorgeous. The sound is phenomenal. Like I think maybe that's the one that's going to take it. But I mean, like I think Ghost as well. It's less like stylized than something like Hades, but like man, I'm just struck every time with how beautiful it is and like the way they've integrated the sound. Like I think Ghost is a little bit more subtle than Hades in terms of art direction, but I that's my personal vote because every time I play that game, I'm blown away by it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Ghost of Tsushima for both answers as well. I just feel like, you know, ever since we had even that state of play, we were just blown away by, well, look at the grass, like look at the wind, look at the environments.
Mhm.
And to me, like as cool as some of these other games look, especially Hades graphically, and like Final Fantasy VII remake, I think was pretty beautiful, but it's got to be Ghost for
Yeah,
art.
I think the other thing about Ghosts is it's integrated so much into the gameplay as well. Like it's the wind that directs you and the sound of like footsteps and things like that. And like I think it's just the other games are phenomenal and beautiful and like artistic masterpieces, but Ghost is like directly tied to its gameplay as well. So
Yeah. So the next category is best score and music for outstanding music, inclusive of the score, original song, and/or licensed soundtrack. So for the best music, I went both my personal and, as you'll see, a lot of my personal picks I think are actually going to win too. I don't know how that lined up. Last year, I remember my picks were like totally different. But I put Final Fantasy VII Remake for both of these. I loved that game. Especially the music, the way it kind of swells in and out of the battle and maintains like alongside the background music without cutting ever. Like the music is just great in that game, and I could listen to that soundtrack all day.
yeah, I think that's good. And you're gonna hear me. This is the last time I'm gonna say it. Otherwise, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I don't. I don't feel like a lot of these categories I should vote on because I'm just not familiar enough with a lot of the games. Like, I haven't played the Final Fantasy remake, and I've intentionally not really watched much gameplay because I don't want to spoil it. So, like, I don't know what the music's like in that game because I haven't experienced it. So I can't, in all good consciousness, like vote for it, even if maybe it would deserve it. So I've gone and just said that if I had to pick one, I would pick or expect Hades to win. Again, the music in that game is phenomenal. It's got like that badass kind of like rock sort of soundtrack to it.
Oh yeah,
But I don't know. I
nice.
think Doom Eternal I think is known for having good music too, but like I haven't played it. The
Fair.
problem with these awards is it's hard to vote because like you just don't have
Just gotta
experience
do
with a
your
lot.
best, man. You just gotta do your best.
Yeah.
Let's move along to the next award, which is best performance, awarded to the individual for voice acting, motion capture, or performance capture. Who'd you have for this one?
This one is again I didn't vote personally, but I think I don't know. I think like like fucking Hades is always known for having amazing voice direction, so like that's got to be it. I think probably what will win is one of the Last of Us ones, just because like it's got the facial animation as well, and like it's just got like so much going for it character wise. So I think it's gonna be one of those two. Although not having played the game, I don't know which one gives a better performance. I think people like Ellie more than they like Abby, so maybe Ellie is my guess.
Well, I mean, I won't comment on that part because it's kind of story
Yeah.
wise. But I have Ashley Johnson winning for her performance as Ellie.
Mhm.
I think she just did an amazing job, and like you said, the facial capture I think is something that puts it ahead of just the voice acting for something like Hades. So, I
Mhm.
mean, not that Hades has bad voice acting, but I think they really would have to knock it out of the park completely to beat the performance from anyone from The Last of Us. At least the two that have been nominated here. But I'll stick with Ashley Johnson for both answers. And we will go to the next category, which is games for impact, for a thought-provoking game with pro-social meaning or message. For this one, I've picked Spiritfarer for my personal choice. I just think that I enjoyed that game so much earlier in the year, and it had a lot of undertones of like each character is dealing with, you know, different mental illnesses or tragic life circumstances, and it's really thought-provoking in those ways, and it made me think a lot about my own life, like I said when we spoke about the game earlier. So I'll go with that, but I think the winner is going to be Kentucky Route Zero. I know a lot of people like that earlier in the year, so I'll go with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have a kind of a similar opinion. Spiritfarer is the only one I've got a slight personal experience with, and it was just the demo. So, but I definitely see a lot of potential in that game for it being very emotional, and just you speaking about it made me feel kind of like passionate about playing it. I think that's what I would give it a pick for. Kentucky Route Zero, I actually haven't seen as much in the media about, so I'm gonna guess Spirit Fair, I think.
Okay.
Oh.
We have Best Ongoing Game next, which is awarded to the best game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolved the player experience over time. So for me, my personal choice, obviously Apex Legends. I love the new season. The new map is great. Keep doing what you're doing, Apex. But I think Warzone is going to win this year. It just is like the new hot battle royale that everyone seems to like. And I don't know. It just seems like Call of Duty's got to win something, right? So I'll go Warzone.
Okay, I'm gonna say that I guess Fortnite's gonna win. I know that Fortnite isn't the like hottest thing ever. People are, people meme it and make fun of it all the time. But like
Oh man,
Fortnite won awards.
don't listen
It's
to that.
just
It's the
so
most
big,
popular
right?
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Like Fortnite is just such an absolute titan in terms of like how many people play it and like how it's received. And I think just Fortnite is gonna take it. I think Fortnite just wins this category by default every time.
That's fair. I don't know. They have those app store things going on right now where like can you play it on the app store? I think they've had some negative PR this year, so maybe it's not their time. But who knows? We'll
Maybe
see.
not. I'm happy to see someone else win it, but I'm gonna guess the safe guess of Fortnite.
Best indie game is up next for outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside of the traditional publisher system. So you can debate what is and isn't indie these years. I mean, Kojima releases games, they're considered indies, so it's a bit of a weird category. I'm gonna say Hades wins this one, and I think it would be my personal pick as well. I was going through, and it's funny because Fall Guys was nominated, and I just think that game, like, it came and went like the flash of a pan, so I don't think it's got a chance. And the rest, like, I don't know, people like Spelunky too, I guess, but I think it's got to be Hades.
I think I will also give a slight edge to Hades, but I think Spelunky 2 actually it's not a sleeper pick. I think Spelunky 2 has a lot of potential. Like Spelunky 1 was like a phenomenal indie game that came out and like it kind of revolutionized a little bit. And I think Spelunky 2 they've also like kind of gone in the same formula but also made a lot of like really good changes. And I think like the reception of that game has been just as positive as Hades, but I think it's just a little bit less in the forefront, and especially right now because Hades just launched, it's got that perfect like timing window of like coming out just right before you start voting. So I think Hades will take it, but I think Spelunky 2 is going to be closer than you expect.
So after that, we've got best AR and VR game for the best experience playable within virtual or augmented reality, irrespective of platform. So for me, my personal choice was Star Wars Squadrons because I loved that game a few months ago, and I would love to try it in VR. Actually don't know how well it works in VR, like from personal experience, but I'd love to try it. I think Half-Life Alyx will win this though, just because it's a new Half-Life game which actually came out this year. So I mean, it kind of seems like a slam dunk there for me.
Absolutely, I give it to Alyx for sure. I think it's phenomenal. It's got some really well crafted like physics systems in VR, and I think it's just like kind of one of the definitive games right now. So I think that's a clear victory.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's move along now. The next awards are actually just about best game from each genre going forward. So we'll start with action games. And for this one again, I can't believe it, but I picked Hades to win and as my personal pick again. It's just like this game seems to be cleaning up at the end of the year. The other nominees just didn't do anything for me. If you look through like Neo 2, Streets of Rage 4, Half-Life Alyx, and Doom Eternal, like to me it's Hades easily.
Yeah, I think Hades is really going to be cleaning up this year. And I think it's great because, Hades seems like a game that deserves a lot of praise, but at the same time, it's like kind of indicative of some of the problems with the Game Awards where it's like the variety for each category is kind of slim. You end up seeing the same couple games over and over again. So yeah, I think Hades is going to take it. I would like to give a personal shout out to Neo just because it's, Souls-like and, we're seeing some little bit of representation here. But I think Hades has got it. Yeah.
After that, we've got action adventure game for the best action adventure game combining combat with traversal and or puzzle solving. What do you think on this?
I gave this one to Ghost of Tsushima. I think it's just a phenomenal game. It's the perfect send-off for PS4. I'm absolutely like engrossed in it. So I gotta go Ghost.
I actually went with my personal pick being Miles Morales. I think it deserves to win something, and this is the category it's in. So I got to give it to that personally. It's going to win as well, though, to be honest, just because I think the other games have had some... The Last of Us Part 2 is just too divisive. Like, there's too many people that don't like it to vote to win this. Then the other games just all have problems. Like, Ori is is a little bit too indie to win, unfortunately. Like, maybe, I don't know if that's even true or not, but I just feel like when it comes down to these type of awards, it's going to be one of the big AAA, like 3D action adventure type of things.
I agree. I think just more
So
people would have played them as well, or like,
yeah, I think so.
yeah.
So after that, we have RPG game, best role playing for the best design with rich player character customization, progression, included massively multiplayer experiences. Like, holy crap, these descriptions are so
Right,
so
there's a
in
lot
depth.
going on here.
Role playing games, Kate.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go on a wild limb and say that we're gonna agree on this one, and we're both gonna have picked Persona
You'll
5 or
never
Persona 5
see it
Royal.
coming. Yeah, Persona 5 role. I actually don't think it's gonna win though. I don't know if you picked it to win. I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake's gonna take this one. I just feel like it's one of those games that people are shocked it even came out, and they're shocked that it was actually good. And it's Final Fantasy VII, and even though like they're both technically remakes, like Final Fantasy VII Remake is sure as hell remaking a lot more about Final Fantasy VII than the Royal is remaking about Persona 5. So I think it's got to be the winner here, even though I would pick Persona.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I guess it's like just a bigger thing too. Like Final Fantasy VII is such a huge game for people, and it's like reliving that game is a very big experience for them versus like Persona's kind of weird and it didn't really get big until 5, so I think there's maybe a lot of people who are less familiar with Persona as opposed to Final Fantasy. So yeah,
Uh,
that's probably fair. But I'd like to give it to Royal.
let's hope it wins. That's all I hope for. If anything in this entire Game Awards, I just hope the Royal wins Best RPG. So next up is Best Fighting Game, obviously for the best fighting game designed primarily around head-to-head combat. This is the most uninteresting thing ever to me.
Right, your Soulcalibur is not even here, so what are you gonna do?
Well, it's a little older. I just gave both my pick and my actual pick to Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah, I think Mortal Kombat 11 is probably the safe pick. I had a personal vote here just for Under Night in Birth EXE Late, which is like the dumbest name I've ever heard in my life. But when I did have a tiny little sample size of some fighting games because my ex was really into them, Under Night was the one I actually enjoyed playing the most. So I gave it like my personal vote is you go Under Night, but definitely they're not going to win. It's Mortal Kombat, I think.
Okay, so changing away from Mortal Kombat and fighting games, we're going to move now to the best family game for best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre. And this is where one of the titans of the year shows up that we've not yet seen. Animal Crossing New Horizons is easily, in my opinion, easily going to win this. No debate. Although my choice would probably be, I don't know, I'm tempted to actually go with Fall Guys on this one, even though I think now that I've talked myself into it, it's got to be Animal Crossing for me as well.
Yeah, I think Animal Crossing is by far the winner here. I don't think Animal Crossing is up for actual game of the year, and I don't think it should win that because it's not like a game in the same sense that other games are and it's just kind of like a sim, and like I think it's perfect at what it does, but it just doesn't quite maybe compete for like, like the intense title of game of the year. But I think this is the perfect genre or like the perfect category for it, and I think if it doesn't win, I will be shocked.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends how you define game of the year, right? That's why these awards are so weird, is because like what are your criteria? But we'll talk about that in a sec. Let's finish off these last few categories here. We got sim and strategy up next. For this one, I personally went with Microsoft Flight Simulator for both answers. The only one that I even came close to personally wanting to vote for is XCOM Chimera Squad, but I haven't even played that. Not that I played Flight Sim either, but Flight Sim just looks so impressive in terms of like what it's doing and how accurately it like gets all the airports around the world and how accurate it is to actually fly the different planes. So I just have to go with that based on my enamoration for it, and like I really like to try this.
Okay, that's fair. To be honest, I didn't even think about that. It's just so weirdly niche, and like it's probably great at what it does, but it's like you're either into Flight Sim or you're not.
People like
People love those games. Yeah, they've got like the whole like plane setup. I wanted to give it this time to Crusader Kings, and maybe that's a slight bias because I've got a friend who's been playing it and like just hearing some of his like hilarious stories of like the issues going on, but it's got so much depth to it, and he's always got like weird issues like, oh, I'm trying to like my character needs to marry this wife for like a political arrangement, but she's actually just been put in jail, and like the funniest stuff just keeps happening. And like it's just such a weird game. So I'm gonna give it to Crusader Kings 3.
What do you think's gonna win, Crusader?
I don't know. Like, I know XCOM is a franchise that people know about, and like Gears, I guess. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like I have enough experience with this category to even like take a good guess. So I'm just gonna be biased and guess Crusader Kings, and maybe I'm right.
Okay. Well, we'll move on. We got 2 categories left. We got best sports and racing game up next, Kate, and this one I
Wow.
know for sure is huge for you.
Well, yes. I'm looking at the options here for best sports slash racing for the best traditional and non-traditional sports and racing game. So we're not even going to pretend that Tony Hawk Pro Skater has a chance because
That's my
obviously nobody's
pick.
picking that.
That's
No,
my
no,
pick.
it's not a real
It's
game.
gonna
Everybody
win
hates
too. It's gonna win
it.
too. I'm
It
telling you
is
right
gonna win.
now.
I know it's gonna win. I absolutely know.
There's
But
no way it's getting knocked out by any of these. I mean, the only one like FIFA, I guess maybe has a chance, but I mean, I think Tony Hawk has this on lock, and I'm gonna be so happy when it wins.
I do not have enough experience with the sports genre. I don't have an interest in it. I have no idea which of these games is going to win. I refuse to vote for Tony Hawk, so I don't know. I'm abstaining from this category. I
Uh,
refuse to answer.
okay, in that case, then you can tell me which is the best multiplayer game of the year for outstanding online multiplayer gameplay and design, including co-op and massively multiplayer experiences, irrespective of the game genre or platform.
See, my personal vote for this one is Fall Guys because it's the one that I had the most fun with, and I think I would go back and play more frequently. But I think this is where maybe Among Us steps forward and picks up a title. It
See,
was
this is
just
interesting though, right? Among Us didn't even come out this year.
yes, it didn't, but I
Why is
guess
it
it's
allowed
like
to be nominated? I'm so confused by this.
yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it like counted as a re-release or something. Like maybe they changed stuff from the original or like gave it an official re-release. I don't know. Like it surprised me showing up here as well, but it was just such like a big phenomenon with so many people who don't normally play games stepping in and like getting into Among Us that I think that's gonna take it. But I don't know. Valorant's huge. The new like Riot League of Legends shooter, so I know that game's doing really well. So I think maybe that could be a second option. But
Yeah. For me, I think Fall Guys is gonna win it as well. I honestly think Among Us, like, first of all, the multiplayer in Animal Crossing is crap. It's
yeah,
like especially the
exactly.
online, it's just so bad.
I didn't even consider it. It's so half baked. The multiplayer in Animal Crossing, like it shouldn't
Yeah.
be in
It,
consideration for this.
no, no, no. And Among Us, like, I just didn't vote for it because to me, to Among Us is my personal pick in terms of like
Mhm.
what I like, but I don't think it's going to win just because I feel like the people voting on this are not gonna pick it. I feel like Among Us is just really popular on Twitch, you know,
Right, I
and
guess that's true.
whereas like the actual voting panel and stuff may not be as into it as like, you know, Joe Bob, the Twitch streamer kind of guy. So
Right, or like yeah, you get like your mom to play Among Us with you, but she's not gonna go vote for the Game
exactly,
Awards.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
So that's my
that's
pick for
true.
that. So why don't we finish it off here, Kate, by discussing Game of the Year 2020, and what we think. What are
Okay.
your feelings?
Well, let's actually read out the nominees just for this one, just because it is the biggest
Sure,
award.
sure.
So this recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields, and nominated was Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Animal Crossing: New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2. So I always like to vote for Game of the Year. It's always an exciting thing. But it's tough sometimes when I always find myself in the position where it's like, "Oh man, I've played this game and I really love it, but like there's this other game that I haven't gotten around to yet and I like think I might love it more, but I haven't played it." So it's like, what do I vote
It's a tough
for?
predicament.
It is a bit of a predicament. So it's like in 2018, I voted for God of War, even though I hadn't played it yet, just because everything I'd seen on it, I knew it was going to be like amazing. And then playing God of War like reaffirmed that. But it's like it's a gamble. What if I end up hating the game? But anyway, existential crisis aside, I personally voted for Ghost of Tsushima. I don't think it's gonna win, just because I think being an exclusive and also kind of like coming out at the same time as Last of Us and like a lot of other big games, I don't think as many people played it
Hmm,
as it deserves. And I think
interesting.
it just I think it's one of those games that doesn't really like do justice to how great it is until you actually like sit down and play it, because it's got a lot of like
Yeah, yeah.
really like immersive and kind of like a lot of what it does is like very subtle, so it doesn't show like a big flashy exciting thing, but then when you actually sit down and play, it's just an absolute like I would consider this game a masterpiece as far as the amount
Wow.
of content I've played. I love it.
Hey,
But I
spoilers!
don't
I
think
just picked it up, by the way. I'm gonna be playing it soon.
yeah, that's right. We can play some online. It'll be good. But I think the game that's gonna win is if Last of Us 2 was not so just like divided in the
Polarizing?
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't so polarizing, I think it would have a chance. I think it's gonna go to Final Fantasy or Hades.
Make a choice. Make a choice.
And of the 2, I'm gonna go with Hades. I think the game is just amazing. It's getting, like, at the worst score it's getting in reviews is 9s. I think it looks absolutely incredible. I'm so excited to play it. And I think it also just kind of gets that buff of, like, being so
Being the
big
new thing.
in the news right now, whereas, like, Final Fantasy came out so much earlier, like, people are kind of played it and they're, like, done with it, it's not on their mind right now, so, like, this is kind of like a reminder of, like, "Oh, yeah, that game was awesome," but, like, maybe I'm playing Hades right now and I'm enjoying it so much, so I think it's
Yeah.
kinda got that end of the year buff going on with it too, and, like,
I know.
it just looks awesome.
I'm so with you on that, and I wish I'd played Hades. I can't believe we haven't done it yet. You know what? It's just because the PS5 came out, and it's like I'm trying to play PlayStation stuff right now. I'm not on my Switch, so that's the only
Mhm.
reason. Looking through this whole list, I just want to tell you something very interesting. Is that I actually would have picked Animal Crossing for my vote, and simply because I find like my own personal definition for Game of the Year is like, it's not just the best game, it's also the game that was kind of in the social sphere, and like it was the game of the year, like when Avengers Endgame comes out, it's like the movie of the year because it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just being a good movie. It's probably not the best
Right.
movie, like technically, right? So for me, Animal Crossing was just such an amazing, like world-changing event at the start of the year with like everyone locked down for COVID, everyone's playing Animal Crossing, like it just took over the world, similar to like Pokemon Go when that came
Right.
out originally. And to me, like that's like the game of the year, even though I would probably say it's the worst game on this list for game of the year nominations, aside from maybe Doom. But I mean, it's a great game and I think it deserves to win that. But so that's my personal pick. But I don't think it's actually going to win because let's face it, that's probably not how these awards are always chosen. So you make a really strong case for Hades, but I think all these games have flaws too. Like Hades is probably the least flawed game out of all the nominees. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is so divisive, right?
Mhm.
So I just don't know if it's going to split the vote. Ghost, I know people really liked it, but there was also like big issues with the stealth part of the game, and I think a lot of people also came back to it for the multiplayer, which I don't know how many people returned for it that are going to be on the voting panels though. So will they be swayed by the addition of the multiplayer, to make up for that the stealth kind of bugs early on? I don't
Mhm.
know. Doom Eternal, like I don't even know why that's on this list. Like this hasn't even been talked about that much this year to me, like
Yeah.
at least where I've been looking. It's kind of a weird pick. And Final Fantasy, I love Final Fantasy, but it does have some pacing issues and like the side quests are hit and miss, stuff like that. But so I think the Final Fantasy is going to win though, just because of the flaws of the other games, and just basically it comes down to The Last of Us is too divisive, even though I think it
Mhm.
is the most impressive game on the list. So Final Fantasy 7 is what I think will win. Yeah,
Interesting. So
I don't know.
interesting. So we'll see. We've covered a lot of games. If either Doom or Last of Us win, then we both suck. Like we were totally wrong. But I think of the 4 we've covered, I think it's gonna end up, yeah, being Final Fantasy or Hades, like you said. So
Hmm.
we've split it, and we'll see who's right. In Animal Crossing, I think is interesting. It just really depends on what you quantify, like how you quantify it, because like yeah, Animal Crossing is like it was a bit more of a phenomenon than some of these other games, and then also like I think it also depends, like, what game did you personally enjoy and, like, did you feel most connected to?
Hmm.
But then it
Hmm.
also says, like, what was the most creative or, like, technical achievement, which is, like, it doesn't really qualify as much for that kind of category. So, like, I think it just kind of a lot of people, I think the average person just votes based on their own bias of, like, which game I enjoyed
Exactly.
the most.
Hmm.
And so I think, like, I guess Animal Crossing, like, might get more votes based on that
Yeah, but I don't see it getting. I
factor,
don't know.
but, like,
I don't know.
I don't see it getting enough and compared to some of these other, like, Titan picks.
Yeah, no, same here. But
I mean,
um,
realistically, these games are all super lucky that Demon Souls came out too late and isn't in contention for this year, because otherwise, like, this isn't even a
no, but it is
conversation.
though, isn't it? Because Miles Morales is on here.
Miles Morales came out before, though, because you could also buy Miles Morales on PS4. It didn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah, but
wait
it
for
didn't. It
5
didn't
launch?
launch. It didn't launch that early though on PS4.
No, I think Demon Souls was not eligible based on the timeline.
I don't know. This is interesting. We'll have to look into this. We'll figure it out. But
Yeah,
in the
we'll figure
meantime,
it
if
out.
you'd like to let us know what your game picks for game of the year are, you can send us an email to circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Or you can check out our Twitter at CANDSpod, where we have a link tree with any way you want to get in touch with us. So you can let us know your picks for game of the year, or send us a listener mail question as well, just like Michael did.
So Michael wrote in, which we really appreciate, and he asked us, and this is a really interesting question for both of us because we have a strong history with this franchise. And he wrote in, As loyal fans of the franchise, do you feel like Nintendo and Game Freak have done the Pokemon games justice in the last decade? Where do you think they've struggled, and what do you think they've done well?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, Michael. God, this is such a big question. We were talking about this before we started recording, and I think the plan here is to actually do a full segment to talk about Pokemon as a franchise, just because we both have so much to say about it and a really long history as well. But I'll just boil my quick thoughts down here for this this question, I guess. First of all, the franchise is obviously doing really, really well financially because everything they release sells like a bajillion copies, and it's like the new best-selling game on whatever console for the most part, and they're just absolutely crushing it in that way. But I mean, personally, if we're talking about the last decade, it's 2010 to 2020. The last Pokemon game released within that timeline was Sword and Shield, and the first one was Black and White. So we're basically judging it based on the progress between those games. And I would say personally that the franchise is, as much as I love it, it's because of nostalgia and because of my attachment to the brand and the fact that we still collect Pokemon cards and that kind of thing. But the games themselves, they're so similar. I mean, it's tough to say because it's like they're kids games, right? But we play a lot of games that are made quote unquote for kids. I just find that it's getting more and more dumbed down. Not that I want it to be tough, but they're just like even more handholdy. And the Pokemon they're creating are cool still, and the battle system's still enjoyable, but they're just designed so conservatively. And I just made a list of like games which have come out, around the 2010 mark, and 2020, and just where they've come. So just to run through quickly, is like compare Assassin's Creed 2 to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, compare God of War 3 to God of War 2018, compare Fire Emblem Awakening to Fire Emblem Three Houses. Like, the other franchises have all moved so far compared to how far Pokemon is made. They're just so consistently conservative in their design, because they sell so damn well. And so, like, it just depends how big of a Pokemon fan you are, I guess. But to me, like, it's just getting to the point where even me as a lifelong fan, like, I pre-order every game. Like, after Sword and Shield, like, maybe this is gonna be the time when I stop pre-ordering these games.
Yep, I agree with everything you said. I think especially with Sword and Shield, that game was embarrassing how lackluster it was. And that was supposed to be like a big one because it was Pokemon's first jump to like basically console, like a home console. Like, I know we've had a couple spin-offs in the past. Like, there was a GameCube game, and I think we've had like 2 sequels from that as well. So there have been console games, but they've been not like
Not like a
mainline.
mainline one though, yeah.
Yeah, they're not mainline Pokemon games. They've been sort of like spin-offs. And so people are excited, like, oh, it's coming to Switch. Like, we're getting like a proper console in the main series. Like, this was their time to like step up their game and shine and like show us what this new console is capable of and where Pokemon is going to go in the future. And I think they absolutely like could not have missed more than they did. Like, I know there was the whole contra, and we'll get into this more in detail. Like, I
It's
talk
just
about
so
this for
hard to
hours.
keep
Like, there was a whole
the
yeah,
wraps on this talk, isn't it? Because
like
I'm so eager to talk about this in more in depth.
like I remember when the game was, controversial before it came out, and people are upset about, Dexit, they were calling it, like, not having all the Pokemon available. And like, I can understand that. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon now. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like wrong to trim it. But the reasons they gave for trimming it were like, we're gonna have improved graphics, like we're putting all of our resources in like, making the game better in other ways. And that just flopped completely. Like, the game is not better in other ways. They're reusing assets for animations from like
From a different
from like
console.
different yeah, from like games from like the 3DS and like going backwards a couple generations. Like, they should, if they don't have the resources to make it like a proper AAA title, something that's of the same caliber as something like Breath of the Wild, then like they either need to be giving Game Freak more resources, or Game Freak is like just not using their resources, they're being lazy, or like whatever the reason is. I don't know behind the scenes why it was so underwhelming, but like there was no improvement to the game
Oh, that's
basically.
unfair. That's unfair. There was
Okay,
improvements.
there was improvement. Sure, we got like the wild areas, kind of a cool idea, and like, yeah, some of the environments looked okay, but some of them were like, like graphically not much better than the 3DS. And you compare that to something like Breath of the Wild, where like, oh my god, like there's been a big jump, and like
Well, it's like I
those
was
other
saying,
friends.
compare the Breath of the Wild to a Zelda that came out nearest 2010. You
Exactly,
know?
like they're not making changes in the same way that other franchises are making changes, and I don't think that's inherently wrong. I don't think every game has to come out and be totally different. Like, it's okay to preserve
No.
kind of like the same experience, but I think that like it's just so incredibly underutilized, and like I can't remember I think the last Pokemon game I actually completed, even though I've played them all, is Gen 3, like Ruby and
Wow.
Sapphire. I think that
Holy
was the last
shit.
one I actually completed because I get halfway through, I've seen all the Pokemon, which is the big draw for me. I know
Yeah.
what they all evolve into now. I've seen them all, like I've seen all their sprites in the game, and then I just run out of steam because I'm no longer compelled by
Uh,
it.
Here we are. I was coming into this conversation thinking I might have been the one low on Pokemon, and I
No.
feel like it's you. So I can't wait to have that segment.
Yeah,
Maybe next episode. Maybe next episode.
yeah, I would love to go more in depth with this because it's a franchise. I love Pokemon. I'll always love Pokemon. Like I have such a strong emotional attachment to the series, but like I just wish that I could be excited when the next game gets announced instead of being like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah. Well, if you guys are excited to hear more of our thoughts on Pokemon, maybe you can get excited for episode number 19. Because in the meantime, we're going to get going for the day. Thank you guys very much for listening. Again, check us out on the internet. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if possible. That would help us grow the show. And we would appreciate every single one of you that does that. Even just listening, though, it's the best thing you can do. Thank you so much. Kate, we'll see everyone again in a couple weeks' time for episode number 19. The intro and outro music for Circles and Squares was produced by friend of the show, Matthew Chan. Interlude music is from Scott Gratton of the Free Music Archive. Our channel art was created by @unreasonable on Twitter, and our brother Alex is the designer of the Circles and Squares logo. Thank you all for listening and supporting the show.